So in today's session, we're going to be talking about how to get started, right? And really, this training is for people just getting started, but it could be helpful to you if you've been around for a while and you haven't got the traction you want. But I'm literally trying to go back and go, how do I come to the very basics? And I was remembering as I was preparing this training, even thinking about it, is that I started my first government contracting business after getting out of the Army. And when I got out of the Army, I went from being an Army Ranger, so an infantry guy at different levels of jobs, but from an Army Ranger to a business owner. And in the Army, I had all sorts of specific guidance. There was literally a manual for everything. If we were moving to try to contact the enemy, there was a manual that told us how we moved, et cetera, right? Think about it as a playbook. But the first thing I want to do is just help you understand the growth stages of business. And then I'm going to say the steps that I do to building a business and starting to make money. So for example, determining what you sell, testing the market to see if there's room for you to get in there. Becoming official is what I call, and you'll figure that out. But I feel sometimes people become official and they spend so much time doing the official things, they don't actually go out and do what they should do, which is sales. And then the last thing I'm going to cover down on is getting your first revenue. If I have time, I'll get to what you should ignore for now. I've done a whole separate training, so I may or may not get to that. But we'll see as we go forward. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, 2 different businesses I started and succeeded. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. That's what I'm kind of going to lay out today, is a high-level process of starting and succeeding in government contracting, just getting started, right? None of this astronomical promises, just how to build businesses. By the way, I just want to clarify that. I do not subscribe to this idea of telling you how you can be making your millions or billions in a minute. That's just crap for business to, if you're building a business, I want to help you build a business that's good for your family, your community, and that is long-term. I'm not here to help you get rich quick. That's just not how it happens in real life. Okay, so let's get rocking and rolling. I want you to understand, right, is that there's 3 stages of building your business. The first stage, when you start a new business, you've got to take care of your family and yourself. You've got to make sure you're feeding yourself. Literally, it could feel like you just have a job, but you started a company. Every single successful company, large company, felt exactly like that, right? The people who started Walmart were working in a small store and doing stuff. They're stocking the shelves. Literally, it feels like a job, right? You're like you're in the work. And so you need to feed yourself by your own efforts, right? And typically the people I guide best on starting businesses are the ones doing construction, professional services, IT, the ones who know how to do the work themselves. There are other areas and my guidance can help you, but really I'm focused on if you are starting a business or if you're in a business that has been started by somebody who has that level of expertise. And so the first thing is to feed yourself. The next thing is to get fed by the staff that you hire. An example is if you're in and you can, let's say you need $100,000 a year to live on, right? And your employees' profit margin is 10% for easy math, and they bring in $200,000 a year. That means you need 5 billable people bringing in $200,000 a year, which will be $1 million. $1 million at 10% profit is $100,000. That $100,000 is what you live on while they're doing the billable work with the customer. This allows you to transition out of, and this is that transition phase, transition out of working in the business, and you'll start working on the business, which is really what the next phase is, right? Now you can start growing your company. The reason this is very important is because, and that I really want to stress this, is a lot of people come into government contracting. We start trying to do all the things that are more typical in the grow your company phase or stage, right? Getting IDIQs, trying to go after prime contracts, all these things that like getting ISO certified, CMMI, those are all necessary stuff for a good, strong business, but not when you just get started, not when you're not making money. When you're not making money, your only goal is to go make money. There's this great line about be impatient for profit and patient for growth. And a lot of us are trying to like, oh, let me go get that 10 million, 20 million, $50 million deals. It's like, no. Go get $1 million that brings in $100,000 profit. So then you can sit around on a beach, or more importantly, you can then begin to grow your company. These are the 3 stages. I really want you to keep them in mind, because you should look at your business and go, where am I? Should I be feeding myself? Should I be going back and figuring out how to get to that stage? And if, or should I be trying to get people in there? So that was just an introduction to the 3 stages. Now I want to walk you through. I'm talking to Johnny, my friend, and he wants to start a business. And he goes, what should I do first? Definitely don't register your business. Definitely don't sit there and create a marketing plan or a business plan, any of that junk. All that stuff is junk. I really think it's junk, because it's a distraction. It's what I call constructive procrastination. You'll be spinning your wheels this whole time, creating all this extra stuff, but you haven't sold anything. And so the very first thing you need to do is to determine what you sell. We describe this as a clear, focused offer. You just need to look at yourself and go, well, what do we sell? What are we good at? An easy way to figure out what you're good at is to go, well, what can I get a job as? Right? I get paid. So for example, I'm good at project management. I'm good at sales. I'm good at IT especially on the Microsoft 365, not so much on the Amazon side. I begin to look and go, what am I good at? Because when I figure it out, then I can answer the question, what do I want to sell for this company? And it doesn't have to be a 10-year decision. It could be for the next 2 years, I'm going to sell Microsoft SharePoint, or I'm going to sell elevator services, whatever, right? If you're an elevator service engineer, why would you start an IT company? So figure out what you're good at, shape that into a clear, focused offer. And then just write this basic capability statement. And when I describe basic, I don't want you overworking it. I just put out a newsletter article yesterday, the day before, so you could go in. Maybe somebody will put the link in. But literally in there, it was last week. And in there, I have a template for how to create a capability statement. You go into Microsoft Word or whatever tool you use, and it's really straightforward. And you're basically just saying, here's what I sell. Here's where I've been paid for it before. But you don't have to worry about a lot, because if you're brand new, we all know what that's like. You can say, hey, this is where we're at. But create a basic capability statement that allows you to talk. And then the last thing I want you to keep in mind as you're moving forward and as you're determining what do you sell is you're going to be selling yourself usually, right? I know people who do government accounting services type products and in construction, they do cybersecurity. Well, if that's the work you do, like right now, I have a customer, they're struggling to get out of that phase where they're in the business and they're experts. And so they know they have to get out. We're helping them get out of that phase, but they're such the expert, just incredible expert. Well, that worked really good for them to go through stage 1 and stage 2. They're literally now trying to transition out of stage 2 where they're completely not in there. And that's cybersecurity, right? So I want you to be thinking that same way when you're trying to determine what do I sell. Imagine you'll be selling yourself for a job. You're not, and I know it, right? We'll talk about that in a minute, but keep that in mind, right? You're really selling yourself initially. And then as you move forward, you're selling yourself and your team. You are the basis for your company's direction and what you're doing. So the first step is, the very first thing I tell Johnny who's starting a company is figure out what you want to sell. Don't go register anywhere. Don't do anything. Figure out what you sell, then go test the market. Those of us who build courses and all this stuff, we know we're not supposed to build anything until we reach out to our customer base like you. If I reached out to you and said, hey, would you buy a course if I sold it on LinkedIn? What people like me and you might do is go, well, let me build the course. If I build it all up and then I can go show them and they'll like it, I'll do all this stuff instead of me checking with you and you going, no, I got all that on YouTube. I can find how to do LinkedIn out there. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you validate that that's a good idea. Well, you want to do the same thing. Figure out what you sell, and then step 2, test the market. The reason you want to do this before anything else is because if the market's not going to buy what you sell, if you can't get somebody to go, yeah, I like that, we'll work with you, etc., then why would you do anything more? Then you would sit there and go, well, I'm trying to start a company that has a bad idea. So an example is, say you do credit card purchasing, or not purchasing, but credit card. When you swipe a credit card, there's a fee that comes off it, and you're the one who processes that fee. If you're trying to start a small business, my understanding is that's an incredibly hard space to get into in the federal market. And if you tested the market, meaning go find where could you actually sell that to, subcontracting, prime contracting, doesn't really matter in that case because it's so hard. But you would find that the processing fee on a credit card is managed by like these 3 huge banks. and there might not be room for you, and you got to reevaluate, what do we sell? And so the reason you test the market is you save yourself all this extra time, and really you start selling by testing the market. So here's a couple of examples of how you can get started with testing the market. The first thing you want to do is just create a target list of small businesses. I have a whole separate training on how to do outreach, and so you can watch it. So I'm just really hitting it. I'm telling Johnny, okay, you say you sell cybersecurity. Perfect. Let's go into DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search tool that I just mentioned. Let's go in there and create a target list of 200, minimum 200 companies that are in some space that is similar to cybersecurity. Maybe they flat out use the same keywords like cybersecurity or zero trust architecture, risk management framework, whatever it is. I'm looking to build a list of 200 companies to start that have similar keywords. And then, and so I can also try to limit that down by, me personally, I could care less where people are at. I like virtual, obviously, but some people like geographic. So I have a customer who's out there in San Antonio, Texas. And so they might say, well, let me start by looking in San Antonio, or maybe you sit there and say, let me find cybersecurity companies that are woman-owned small business like I am. I'm starting a business. It's going to be a woman-owned small business. So let me find other women-owned business owners. You can find that commonality to filter down if you want. But the idea is to build this list of businesses that are doing $5 to $20 million. That is a really good sweet spot, right? There's nothing overly wrong with people doing more than 20 million. But at that point, they're getting farther away from, just winging it, saying that softly. And they're getting a lot more closer into proven processes. And maybe they're looking for you to have more experience. But if you find companies doing $5, $10 million, up to $20 million, then that owner, those leaders still remember what it was like to be a small, and for them to struggle up and down, right? And so they're open more to your conversation when you come in and say, hey, I'm starting a new business. We do this. I've not been a business owner, but I've been getting paid for this forever. I want to build my experience as a subcontractor. Are you open to that conversation? 15-minute conversation, right? When you reach out to 100 people or 200 people, you're going to get 5 or 10, maybe 15 or 20 people getting back to you where you can begin to find it. You only need one person out of those 1 to 200 people saying yes to say, you know what, we got a contract. I need to fill it. You've got a certification or you've got a skill set that I could use. I'll be happy to do it. Happy to sit there and give you some guidance as we go along. There is a ton of us out there like that. We're givers. We believe in giving when we can, right? We're not sacrificing ourselves. If you come onto our contract, I'm going to take 5% or 20% off the top, right? So I'll make my profit as a business owner helping you. But if you reach out to these people and you find them, now you've just tested the market, right? You've been able to confirm that they're out there and they're willing. So you've gauged the market. You gauge the market's willingness to talk with you, right? And when I work with customers who've been around a long time, this exact same process I do with them. I'm just telling Johnny, I'm telling you, right? Before you do anything constructive procrastination, all this extra stuff, first, determine what you sell. Second, test the market. And then third, when the market likes you and you're like, oh yeah, we'll buy it, then become official. And so I'm reversing this, especially for people just getting started or thinking about getting started. I'm reversing it and saying, now create your company. Now go out, get an email domain, a website, et cetera, nothing fancy. But what's the point of getting a domain called Credit Cards R Us or Credit Card Processing R Us only to find people aren't going to buy that, right? And so getting an email and domain now makes sense. You've got a company or 2 or 3 companies that said, sure, I'm happy to figure out how we can work together. Let's make it work. So now you create that company, create the email stuff. I don't know if you do this way, but the way I start new companies is I register at the state level. They take care of stuff for me. Then they also send it out to the IRS to get me the EIN, which is basically a social security number for a business. So you get your stuff done, right, for a company. And then you come into SAM and you register in SAM saying, hey, I want to register with the federal government to sell to the federal government. All that basic stuff, which allows you then to proceed into DSBS. But now you're becoming official. You're not wasting your time doing all this stuff and going and taking classes on how to properly register in SAM or blah, blah, blah. You're figuring out what you sell. You're knocking on some doors and saying, would you buy it? And then you're proceeding. So step 4 now, you went and quickly, like in a week, registered your business. Let's say a week, because sometimes it takes a while to turn it around. But you're registered now. So you've determined what you sell, you tested the market, and you found people who said, yeah, I'll work with you. I'd love to buy your services. And now you're registered. So let's get your first revenue. The way I describe this is you want to be a subcontractor first. I think I'll show this in a minute. I'm surprised I didn't show it already. Let me go through really quick. Oh, okay. So I'm going to talk about 3 revenue streams in a second. But what I wanted you to understand is when you're getting revenue and you're doing stage 1, feed myself, basically it feels like a job sometimes. And I'm telling you, be okay with that, right? Think of it like a W-2. And the way subcontracting happens, and forget about this large business subcontracting flow down stuff. The way subcontracting works for real businesses when we get started and we're building is as an employee, if you're feeding yourself, you're a W-2. And then if you come out and you're a consultant and you're going back basically, well, you're a 1099. It's still basically an employee, but you're at a 1099. But then you come out and you go further and you do a 1099 corp to corp. And this is corp to corp means business to business. That's literally what subcontracting is. I'm underneath your business, which has a prime contract with the government. That's what you're trying to do. There's all sorts of different levels in here. But basically, when you're getting started out, you're just coming in as corp to corp. Don't overthink this. The prime will take care of it, especially when you're talking about a small business prime. I've done this many, many, many times, not once, not twice, but many times in many different companies over a course of 2 decades, right? And so it's the same process to get started. You find somebody willing to sit there and take a chance on you and you move in. You don't want to spend a long time. You want to get in the door, and the fastest way is a subcontractor. Very quickly, I just wanted to touch on this for anybody who's not tracking. I teach and I really preach hard that if you're in the federal space, you should only be in the federal space. And the reason is because if you can see these clouds here, the federal space is one customer, right? I don't care what anybody else says about it. One federal customer. You know how I know? Because there's one budget. It's the president's budget, and the president has all these divisions we call departments or agencies or whatever, but basically it is one budget with one group of employees. Are they all different? Sure. But you go into Walmart, are they all different? Yes. Have you been to Panera Bread? Panera here, Panera there, they're all different, but they're under an umbrella. Well, in the federal government, all these agencies are under one umbrella, which I'll talk about in a second over on the right. But on the left-hand side, you see all these different clouds. The real distinction I'm trying to make is that everybody in the commercial, state, local, nonprofit world, they all operate separately. And so if you're doing anything, you're constantly having to relearn. You're constantly having to struggle, and you rarely, if ever, get long-term contracts, 5 years, right? Or big contracts, $5 to $500 million, right? That is in the government. And so if you're trying to build up a big business, if you're just trying to have a $5 or $10 million company, do whatever you want. But if you're trying to build up a company that is, you envision 100 million, or I got a customer who wants $1 billion company, right? If you're envisioning that, then you want to be in somewhere like the federal market. And the reason I want you to focus all in on the federal market is so that you're building experience, past performance that these people inside will respect. If you do work at one commerce agency, then another commerce agency is going to like that. And then maybe the sister department over here will respect it. If you do stuff in the Navy, the Army might appreciate your experience over there, but the Army might not appreciate as much your experience at Geico. It's like, that's cool, you were at Geico. But if you sit there and say, I was doing warfare stuff in the Navy and we'd love to support you in the Army, once they get past the Army-Navy rivalry, they'll be in there. And so this is one big customer. And the way you can understand it is all these common tools that they have. I've heard people talk about the federal market as complex and it's really difficult. No, it's not. It's got a set of rules. I learned how to ride a bike. You know what? It was very hard to learn to balance until I did. It was very hard to learn how to pedal without getting my shins scraped up until I did. Federal market's no different. It's got a set of processes. I learned the processes. I'm good to go. So on the right-hand side, you see where I got federal market common tools. There's one tool, one place that we register, which I just talked about, sam.gov, is where we register to sell. On the commercial, state, and local, there's 1,000 places you register. There's one set of rules for acquisition across the board. Even if you think about DFARS or any of this other stuff, there's the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, guides all of how the government does stuff. And it basically is trying to establish the process of fairness across the board, my way of saying it. The third bullet there, Yelp, is CPARS. And so CPARS is basically the government's, the federal market's Yelp review. And buyers, federal buyers, can go into CPARs and see your Yelp review. Neil did work with us and he sucks. Neil did work and he was great. He was exceptional, very good. These ratings and the reviews are official, and when they go in, they're available to all buyers. Number 4 here, opportunity list, same tool, sam.gov, but inside of SAM, you have all these opportunities across all these different agencies. It's not every opportunity, but you don't have that in the commercial, state, and local, et cetera. So this is, again, another reason why I'm pushing you in. The acquisition life cycle is the same. Once you start learning it, in one agency, pretty much the process is going to be identical across the board. That's not the case on the outside the federal market. And then the last one is long-range acquisition forecast. Not only do they try to predict what opportunities they have coming down the pike, what requirements they have that they need to get vendors for, but also you have a whole list of all these contracts that are expiring. You don't have any of that for the most part in state, commercial, local, et cetera. So that was me going off on a soapbox on why you should be all in. I'm okay if you go to commercial and not federal, but if you're going to invest the time and energy into federal, go all in. It's the fastest way to grow the company to wherever you want it to be. One quick thing I just want to say about this is just understand the federal dollars. As you're getting started in government contracting, you might hear people talking about trillions or even hundreds of millions or billions. Ignore all those people. They're just trying to be sensational. The reality is the government spends about $600-700 billion a year on government contracting. These are what we call small business eligible dollars because theoretically small businesses can participate. $600 or $700 billion, but that's not really the case, right? We're much smaller. Let's say 150 billion is the true small business window. That's still a ton, 150 billion. But inside of that, right, if you're cybersecurity, you're shrinking that down to, let's say, 10 or 15 billion. And if you shrink that down, eventually you get down to like $1 billion in what you sell. That's totally cool, but don't get distracted by billions and trillions. Just think about the millions that are in your space and figure out how to go win them with that clear, focused offer you have. Here's the 3 revenue paths. This is a more mature thing. I got a separate training on it. But the thing I want you to remember is there's 3 ways to make money in the federal government, right? I talked about the 3 stages of growth. This is different on these are the 3 revenue paths. The first one is subcontracting under small businesses. That's what I described today. Find small businesses and be on their team and subcontract with them. The second one path to making money is prime contracting, where you're directly with the federal agency. And the third one is subcontracting under large businesses. It is very similar to subbing under smalls, except for larges have a much tighter set of criteria for accepting you. And so I say pursue revenue in the federal market first with path 1, then path 1 and 2, and eventually path 1, 2, and 3. Here's what I want you to keep in mind as we wrap up this session and this weekend or this week. When you're starting a business and you're trying to get traction, or if you've been around a while and you're not making the money you want, the first thing is stop and make sure you understand what you sell. You must have a clear, focused offer that's easy for other people to understand. The second thing is go test the market. Stop doing all this other stuff that might be constructive procrastination and go knock on the doors of your potential buyers. For those of you just getting started, that's small businesses. For those of you who have a lot more experience, you can knock on agency doors and large doors, but don't spend a lot of time doing this other stuff. Go test the market. And the third thing is when you're all done with those first 2, then register to sell, right? Then do all this other stuff that is the busy work, necessary work of a business, but that can wait until you test the market. So hopefully that made sense for you. If you got questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll come back and answer them over the weekend. For all of us as you move forward, just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.